Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Daily Bugle set 76178 in all of its wonderful glory. I figure I'm going to do a review, just a quick one, going through my thoughts on all of the different sections. Then I'm planning to do some ideas about placement for it in Brick Nottingham. And then last of all, I think all of the amendments that I could make, or maybe should make, to make that placement even better. So, let's get started. So I'm going to start this review on my building desk just because it makes filming a lot easier, especially when we take apart all of these subsections of this incredibly tall building, 82 centimetres in height right up to there, with the mast and fire star and so on. But that does mean that, well, I'm not going to be able to keep much of it in shot at any one time. So the first bit I'm doing was shaky hand cam, as you can see. But this is a very good set overall, I must say. The overall verdict is that it is awesome. And I think it's best at, well, its primary job, which is always good, of being a centerpiece for Marvel collectors, in that, you know, it's just got all the characters from all the different sort of generations, as far as I can tell, of Spider-Man, and loads of little in-jokes and sort of references and all the rest of it, which makes it a really special set. So I think the really short verdict is, if you are a massive Marvel fan, then this is definitely the set for you. Now, that isn't necessarily the case for me personally, so I'm going to be dwelling more on the other aspects of this set, as to whether it's sort of well built and whether it's good to convert and whether it's good to have if you've got a more regular city rather than having a sort of Marvel-centered collection. And in that respect, it's not quite as good. Now, that's kind of fair. Because it's not designed to be, you know, sort of integrated into a normal Lego city. It is a Marvel centerpiece at the end of the day. So it's not really a massive criticism of this set as such, but it is what I'm going to be focusing on because that's what I'm interested in. So don't think of this as a long sort of video rant criticizing elements of this set, even though some of it will be negative. I do think overall this is a great set, but I am going to pick up on what I see as some of the real sort of compromises and shortcomings of it for use in my city, because that's what I've been thinking about, how to use it, how to fit it in, and how to amend it so it actually works in my setting, which is Brick Nottingham. Right, so let's get on with reviewing this relatively quickly, floor by floor, and oh golly, I'll just lift off the rest of the building to leave us with one floor, and just doing that, I think I nearly dropped it forward all over this area. It would have smashed into the camera and absolutely everything, and that kind of highlights the real problem with this building, in that all the accessibility from all of these sort of panels that open, you see that just pulls open incredibly easy, really makes the building, the whole thing, quite fragile, and that's made even worse with these very large sort of sections of windows and things. So the whole thing is really not very robust, but we'll come to that more later on in the review. But yeah, it's one of the real weaknesses of this whole building. Right, so the first floor, I may as well get rid of the taxi as we first start. I quite like this. I'm not going to use it as a taxi because I've got loads of taxis in my city already, so I figured if I just sort of went like that, it wasn't a taxi anymore, and I haven't used any of the stickers, and I'll put on some more sort of Lego City style number plates onto the front and back. And then when I change the skin tone of the driver, it can just be another sort of oversized American vintage car in my city. I do think this roof is a little too chunky though for my liking. I think I might change it over to one of those 6x4 kind of roof panels that they've started putting on the more recent cars, which means I'll probably have to change or move one of the windscreens as well. And this is a bit wobbly as well with the building, you know, it's not got any connection there, and it'll either break off at that point or break off at this point very easily. And that might be so it's a play feature, so somebody can kind of rip it off and one superhero can sort of be destroying it or something like that. There's not much room for a passenger either, so yeah, not that great. Not a big fan. It just seems a shame not to include it in my city since the rest of the build is so nice, but yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to get this. And a similar criticism actually is true of the kind of side build, which is the Newsstand. Again, we've got another newsstand now. At least this time, with it being next to the Daily Bugle, it makes a lot of sense. But we did get a newsstand before a couple of times, I think. So it just feels like we've got far too many of them in the city. And this is really wobbly as well. It's just held on by two of these pieces with clips, and you can see that one's been left behind and one's come with it, so it's not particularly stable. And again, I suppose if that's in a Marvel sort of setting, maybe this is getting destroyed by one of the villains. Oh, I've just destroyed it even more. You know, the whole thing's not very well held together, I must say. So yeah, I don't particularly like that. But again, it does make sense with being part of a Marvel set. Then before we go much further, I must talk about all the minifigures. So we've got a few of them here. I don't know all of these, and I haven't even included all of the ones that come with the set, because we do get a massive 25 minifigures with this set, which is absolutely crazy. So I haven't actually even built most of them, because I'm going to be probably selling some of them to make some of the massive cost of this set back. And indeed, if you're interested in buying one of these buildings and you've already got quite a Marvel collection with many Spider-Mans and probably a Sandman you've got from a different set, and maybe a Mysterio and Carnage and Venom and all the rest of it as well, then why not go on eBay and buy a set for about half the price, where somebody's removed all the minifigures but left all of the building. So if you think about that, it's absolutely crazy, really. You can get virtually the entire set for half of the value, and the minifigures represent the other half. So I think that's really crazy, and in a way I kind of wish I'd done that as well, but then again, I wouldn't have got the Firestar at the very top, and Mrs. Hood definitely had her eye on that. Yeah, so the minifigures that I have included are generally the ones without any skin tones, essentially, because all of my city has yellow skin tones, everyone's the same. And some, like Sandman, I figured I'd be able to yellow up, because he's got one sort of sand-coloured arm anyway, so I just need to change out that hand and his face, and I've probably got one that looks very similar to that, because that's quite a common sort of expression. And then I've got a yellowed up Sandman, so that would be absolutely fine. And another reason why I kept him was because of this wonderful construct that kind of moves. It's got a couple of joints in it, so you can have him emerging from the pavement, in this case, to do his evil work. So I'm pretty sure he's a bad one. That shows how much I know about Marvel. And I really like Mysterio as well, with his wonderful cape and his sort of domed head. So I thought I'd definitely keep him as well. And I've augmented him with these two hand pieces and this body piece, which you can get all three of from Lego Bricks and Pieces. And they come in the set 76174. So I got those on that very recent haul to augment my one, because I thought that made him even better. So yeah, that's really good. And then we've got lots of connection points all around the build to sort of have people over the canopy here, or for example, or on the pavement, or up to whatever they're doing. So that's really nice when it's used in that sort of Marvel collector's setting of being able to display all those minifigures in a very sort of active way. But again, I'll probably remove those details when I put it in position, because having a big skyscraper that's sort of got an absolute sort of plague of minifigures all sort of crawling up it when all the others have none doesn't really make much sense. One minor criticism that's probably been covered a million times is that this connection for joining it onto other modulars is in the wrong place. Should actually be there, but that's minor. I don't know why they've bothered, really, because it's not like it really needs to be connected via some cardboard boxes to any neighbours, but nonetheless, they've done that. Now here's another example of the rickety nature of this building. We've got this sort of panel that we can remove, which presumably is to replicate some sort of scene in one of the movies or something like that, or just have one of the baddies smashing through or out. And it's all very well, but it's very wobbly. You can sort of see this whole piece, it just sort of rattles around, can fall out during transit. The grip on these rails is not that great, so you can just see that really sort of pops off quite quickly. And without it, I could lose this piece on the inside, and it's not even obvious exactly how it goes connected until you sort of line everything up. So it's not great. And another example of how rickety this building is, you've got that being very mobile indeed. And indeed, even all these window panels, because they're so tall and they're unsupported throughout their entire length, the whole thing is very wobbly indeed. So when you kind of pick this up, and when I transport modulars, I usually sort of grip them by the sides, the flat sides, because that's where you're getting the most grip, because these base plates are a bit too bendy. Then, well, you're in danger of sort of pushing your hand right through one of the walls in doing so. So it's very wobbly indeed and very sort of structurally problematic. I think if I'd built this, I wouldn't be particularly proud of how strong it was, because I always try to build a bit of strength into my builds. So yeah, I'm not too much of a fan of that. But I absolutely love the canopy over the top of the door. Which raises another problem, that if I'm actually going to change the name of my building from the Daily Bugle to something Brick Nottingham based, then this sign is no longer going to work. So I might just have to replace it with red tiles or black tiles or something like that with no sign on at all. And that kind of makes it a little bit worse. Another really good little build is these bins at the back, which you get two of, and they've got rubbish in them, and they're based on these 4x3x2 containers, and that's very clever actually. I hadn't thought of that before, but they're absolutely perfect for it. Obviously the roof, or the lid rather, of these things isn't hinged, and as you can see isn't that easy to get up back on either, but otherwise really good. We've got a little secret hidey hole here for Spider-Man's backpack, because I believe he hid them all over the city in order to make his job a lot easier. And this is where we start to get to some of the really big problems. Look at that. You see, that's all sort of falling apart as I lift it up. These floors are all too deep. They're really hard to get your hand in and place minifigures in. And the reason for that is quite clear. It's because of these rail pieces. They're only coming in one length, which is 16 long. So in order to have this height perfectly representing one whole floor, then you need to have the floor being exactly 11 bricks and one plate, if I remember correctly. Oh no, it's 13 bricks and one plate high. And that is, well, very deep indeed for a Lego building. And although the look with the rails sort of being the sort of main structural part that's sort of linking everything together is kind of a good one, I think it is, well, it comes with its downsides, essentially. I mean, I can barely get my hand in here at all. And obviously, if you've got smaller hands or child hands, then it's a lot easier. But to show you in there is very difficult indeed. So we have got a security desk, and that's a really nice build, really like that, and kind of a security barrier that they'll let you through. A load of wonderful stickers throughout the set, including this great big sort of foyer TV screen showing what's going on the TV channel. And then you have one of the biggest peculiarities of all, which is very hard to show you indeed, because it's kind of behind this TV screen in that corner, and it's the elevator or lift. I don't know if you can see that at all on my phone screen, which I film on. I can't see it at all. We'll see it probably better on other channels, other floors rather, but in there is an elevator door, and it's quite a funky build actually. It's very clever. I really like the two sort of 2x6 tiles sort of coming together to represent the two doors, and we've got some new printed tiles in there to represent kind of the lights that are above the elevator that show you whether the thing's going up or down or not. But it's on the back wall. It's actually on there. So, I mean, it's sort of a very clever way of sneaking a lift in or an elevator into a building without taking up a huge amount of space with a lift shaft. But it's just on the inside of the back wall. Now, if this was like one of my facades that I have all throughout Brick Nottingham, this was kind of against the back wall or even had an open back, it would make absolute sense, and I get that a lot. But with it just being on the inside of the back wall, it's a bit of a cheat, actually. Again, I'm not sure it's something that I would have done if it was my mock build, so or that I'd have got away with without your criticism, quite rightly so. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of that either, to be honest. So that is a compromise of this set that I find it hard to get away with. And to be honest, we're going to have even more problems with the elevator as we go up. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. And then we come to another recurring problem that's going on with this set, and that's these sort of unfinished bits. So you see that back of the box that we looked at that hid Peter Parker's backpack in? Completely unfinished. And then here, just above the lift here, and here, at different levels, just unfinished studs. It just looks untidy and could have easily been cleaned up. And those sort of bits that aren't even at the same level as each other they just don't look right. It's almost like somebody forgot to do that last bit of finishing. So what is this floor? It's just one great big reception. So yeah, I'm not massively fond of the interior, I must say, but the foyer and the sort of front view, which is the main one, is a very good one. So anyway, I've probably talked too long already. Let's move on to the second floor. Right, so I'm going to take my life into my hands and lift off the next section live on camera. And you can see it's kind of clinging, but leaving that front panel behind. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's not as easy as you might hope, to be honest. So I'll put that very carefully to one side. So normally in a modular, the whole sort of floor lifts off in one piece and is very sort of movable, and you can kind of just put them to one side, put them in a spare bit of roadway or something like that, wherever you've got a flat surface. But not so on this. This is not connected, this front panel, to the rest of it really at all. It kind of sits on the floor below with this bit here, and then kind of tucks in very cleverly with these sort of rounded sort of dome pieces here underneath this edge here of tiles. So it kind of clips in kind of like that. But when you've lifted one off on its own, well, there's absolutely nothing connecting these whatsoever. They're free and clear. So basically you have to find somewhere safe to put this to one side. And if you rest it like that because of its signs, then essentially it's going to start falling apart. So it's a little bit fragile. And the same is true of the one above with the green goblin on. So anyway, this is nice with some really nice stickers on. It doesn't really fit me so well in that they've all got Lego skin tones, but I can probably ignore that. I figure that if I completely de-Daily Bugleize this set, if that's a word, then it'll look a bit too boring, completely converted. So I think I will keep on these sort of newsfeed type billboards on the front. So yeah, they're very, very colourful, if a bit too Spider-Man-y for me. So here is the next floor. And this is the newsroom. And now you can much better see the elevator or lift in the corner that repeats on all of the floors, and now you can start to see that it really is part of that back wall, and is a bit funny if you think about it where it actually goes. You must have to sort of walk through the doors and you go, and you kind of fall out the back. And another really stark feature of the whole build, which I really do like, is this red fire escape on the side. We've got the sort of double ladder that reaches the floor, and then we've got a single ladder up to the next level, and so on. Now, there is a minor criticism of this in the fact that, generally speaking, on buildings, I've kind of checked this on Google, you'd have one of these balconies per floor. So there'll be one here, and then there'll be another one up here without this intermediate one. And maybe that would have looked worse than this. This, I don't know, it just feels that there are too many balconies, because this one is kind of at, well, mid-floor level because of the incredibly deep floors that we've got for the, the rails to fit. So I don't know, it just looks a bit odd to me having it inaccessible from the inside if there were a fire. So essentially I'd have preferred to have a double length ladder, much like we've got here to reach the ground, between, say, here and the floor above. But I guess it would have flapped around quite a lot, and that's probably why they did it like this, just so it didn't sort of flap. So maybe when I remock mine, I might, especially if I make the whole building taller, use the existing pieces I've got, but just buy more of the ladder pieces to kind of make them less frequently platformed, but with the same sort of reach. So anyway, there we are. And then this bit is actually a sort of outside balcony because the building comes in at this point. So this is sort of technically part of the floor above. And this has a couple of issues as well, because we've got these lovely decor pieces that kind of end all of the rails, and they're all very well, but they all move. So again, when you transport this, they aren't very well connected, and they all end up completely skew with or even fall off, as I've just done that. Oh, where's that gone? I'll have to try and find that later. So you see the problems that I'm getting at. That wasn't even rehearsed. But basically, you end up then having to realign everything so it looks right when you finally got it into position. And there's no way you can move this building without gripping things like that. So yeah, bit of a problem. So we've got the news floor. And we've got some wonderful printed tiles for all of the different newspaper articles of the past that they're very proud of. Got lots of different desks and some really interesting sort of furniture builds throughout this entire set. And again, lots of stickers. And the very bright floors I quite like as well. We had bright green on the ground floor, and now we've got some sort of flamish yellow orange, and I think that looks really good and sort of makes all the insides pop, because otherwise they'd be really grey. But here we come to another of our two recurring problems with this set, finishing. Look, we've got all these studs showing here because we've moved from kind of a too wide supportive structure for this central column with all of the news screens on to a one wide bit for part of the roof. And it just doesn't look right to me. Couldn't they have done something there? I don't know. And then the other one's the sort of structural integrity. And you see these, how easily they move and how fragile this build is. I mean, if you were to have to try and catch this because you dropped it or something, you would definitely go through both sides at once, I think. And that gives us even more problems for remocking it, because it's quite weak as a structure already. So if I start trying to, say, remove the back wall, which is one of the considerations we'll look at later, I'm not sure it's going to be strong enough to hold together with just the side walls and these openable front panels. So it's a real quandary as to what to do. So yeah, that is the second floor. So I will just show you the action of putting one of the panels in, which sits on this kind of one wide layer of the floor below, which is largely tiled, only a couple of studs, one on each end. And that kind of sits on that. And then those rounded bits we looked at earlier kind of tuck under those, and the spacing is absolutely perfect. It's quite a sort of satisfying feeling pushing that in. However, it isn't firmly attached by any means. So usually when I take big buildings up to the Lego room from down here, I do them all in one piece because, well, I'm not nervous about it as such. But in this case, I think I'll make an exception, because any sort of angle I start carrying this at, this may well fall out, and that would be quite annoying. So yeah, it's not that sturdy. All right, so I'm going to take my life into my hands again and do this on camera. Okay, that one came apart pretty well, actually. I think I'm getting slightly better at doing it by sort of tipping it towards me and then lifting, as opposed to just trying to lift it vertically. But this, again, is a very nice section. And we've got the sort of repeating pattern of all of these large panes. But this time, of course, we've got the Green Goblin smashing out. And I think it's a really good dynamic scene, and you can kind of position all these pieces. And you have to do that to make it look realistic, because they're all kind of on hinge bricks and move all over the place. But I do like it, so much so that I might actually keep it in the final one. So why Green Goblin would be smashing out of the Brick Nottingham newspaper, I've got no idea, but I do really quite like it. So this front panel isn't attached either. And because these pieces are all hinged and kind of attached, and there's slight variations going on, it doesn't really sit flat either, and he sort of flaps around, so you've kind of got to just put that safely to one side. And it's not that strong, so it really could break. So again, we've got that sort of fragility type factor coming into it yet again. And of course, you can use all of the pieces in these kind of broken shards to rebuild the building or window in a very sort of standard way, like all the other floors. So all the pieces are there, so I could do that. And I'm glad they did that. That you'll just end up with a few excess pieces rather than the other way around. But you can see just me taking it off and putting that flat has caused it to break there. So it's just really, really fragile. So I'm going to put that to one side, just with the note that the Green Goblin is awesome. And we'll look at the interior of this floor. Now, these are getting a lot smaller because we had the balcony on the back. We've actually only going to sort of 2 window panels per side rather than 3. That doesn't mean it's any more strong. These are just as wobbly as they were before, and these just as likely to sort of get knocked and fall off. And when you put them on, you really do have to support both sides, or you'll poke it through with your thumb. But I think this has made it even more basic. And we do have really nice builds like this photocopy here that does lift up. I'm having a little problem with. I mean, that is absolutely great little side build. And we can see the elevator even more clearly now. But the first problem is with that elevator. As I mentioned earlier, we've now got an elevator on the back wall here. But hold on, the floors below were 3 panels deep. See, the elevator was here. So basically the elevator must go up the first few floors along what is the back wall there, then sort of take a bit of a right turn, or a left turn in this case, and then start going back up again along the back wall of here. So the fact that all the elevator doors don't line up at all, I think is, well, a problem for my mind anyway. You might not have noticed that, and maybe I've just ruined it for you for life. Sorry about that. But yeah, these details are important. I mean, I spend a lot of effort in my builds trying to get these sort of things right. So I kind of figure that Lego definitely should with theirs. But, you know, it goes back to where we started. As a Marvel centerpiece, it's great. As a normal building, not so great. Another compromise here is, well, we wanted a back wall for Peter Parker's office, so they built one out of lovely sand green bricks. But because they wanted that and they didn't want it to interfere with the outside, they just put it kind of in front of the building with some sort of random brick colours showing there as well. So again, it's just not that perfect. Added to the fact that we've got some random bricks sort of showing on all the other floors and other walls as well. And it just goes to that finish position that we've said earlier. These studs here, I don't know, it's not perfect. But there's not really much to talk about otherwise on this floor. It's very straightforward. So let's move on to the next one. Now, hopefully this is the last sort of separation I have to do on camera. Oh, camera. And there you see again, another weakness. So I've pulled off this corner bit, held on by just one stud. And with things that are very easy to misalign when moving this around, this has kind of fallen off. All just trying to get that roof off. So it's pull towards and then up. Right, there we go. So we'll look at that last. This is another floor with the same sort of pattern. This one has these nice flagpoles on, which I think I would probably put lower down the building, but we do have those screens lower down. And all these panels are interchangeable, so you could very much change the order of them very easily. So that's quite good. But I tell you what, it's very repetitive building these. All these window pieces and all these modified bricks to hold the rails on. It takes absolutely ages and, well, isn't fun by the end of things. And this one is probably the most rickety of all. So anyway, there we go. Fire escape continuing on this side. Rickety windows here. Now I've put this guy, whose name is Venom, I think, on this turntable that's usually used to support the spider buggy, which is kind of the car that's driving up this side of the building. Now, I haven't even built that buggy because I thought it was absolutely silly. And I think even the comic fans and Marvel fans think that the spider buggy is a bit silly. I mean, from my personal perspective, why would somebody who can climb up walls really, really quickly and sort of fly around whole city blocks, you know, with ease, would need a car to drive up the side of a building and then it wouldn't be able to get to the next one, or maybe it jumps, I don't know. But anyway, I didn't want that in my city, so I might actually, once I've removed Venom, actually change this bit out so it doesn't have this turntable visible on it. But I just thought for now I'd mount another one of my characters on the side here. And we've got another basic kind of floor, really. Some other interesting colours, interesting stickers, and another really nice desk build made out of an inverted arch and arch piece. And I think they look all fine. But, yeah, so what? I mean, it doesn't really inspire you to make another 2 floors on top of this, because what on earth would you put in? More offices? I don't know. So, yeah, again, good for Marvel, not great for the rest. Structure, not great. We've got another lovely billboard on the back, which looks a bit sort of dated now, a bit peeling, a bit worse for wear. We've got a lovely bird in a nest, which is exactly the same build that I used on my One Tree Hill near my castle for the eagle nest with an egg in it. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, not a huge amount to say on this floor. More of the same, I guess. And finally, we've got the roof section. And this section's probably my favourite, which is a bit odd. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, really. But it's very sort of straightforward around the edges with more of these sort of wibbly pieces that we have to align. But we've got some really nice builds, if you ask me. This water tower is arguably the best build in the whole thing. It's exactly the right scale. It's using some quite interesting building techniques and pieces. And I think it looks absolutely perfect, augmented with a few stickers as well. I really like the communications kind of tower with all of its different... You see, I've just pulled off 2 of those accidentally. It's really irritating. But we've got a communications disc dishes all the way up this tower, all different shapes and sizes, and that looks really great. And it looks absolutely accurate to real life ones, if you ask me. And I think I'm going to have to fight Mrs. Hood for Firestar now, because this was the one minifigure she wanted to add to her Wonder Woman collection, because she actually wants to be Firestar. Not wants to be like her, but wants to actually be her. So she's definitely put dibs on this, but I think she looks great at the top here with this wonderful new kind of explosion piece, which really sort of adds to the sort of dynamic energy sort of flowing out of her when she's flying along, and with those hand pieces. I mean, the thing I would need to change, obviously, is her face to a yellow skin version, and that might be the reason why she actually ends up getting her for her desk rather than above my city. But nonetheless, an absolutely wonderful minifigure that I definitely won't be selling. So that's good, and very sort of dynamic and posable sort of action as well. And then the bit that everyone notices kind of first, the actual Daily Bugle sign. And it's very simple, just made out of tiles and a few plates and so on, but it really does look very good and very accurate to the comics and so on. Let's see if I can stick these bits actually back on. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be an obvious change if I'm going to be changing the name of the paper to match something in Brick Nottingham. I mean, the real life Nottingham paper is called the Nottingham Post. So technically I'd have to have Brick Nottingham Post, which is crazy long. I could have the Brick Post or something like that. That would be about the right size. I'd have to get rid of the Bugle as well. So I'm really in two minds as to whether I keep this the Daily Bugle and, you know, keep that nod to Marvel and Spider-Man and all the rest of it. And then I don't have to change the sign at the very bottom on the foyer. Or do I really go through it and completely change it into the Brick Nottingham Post? I'm really torn. That's probably my biggest question. I really appreciate help from you guys on, really, because whether I change the building or not, it doesn't really depend on whether I change the name, but changing the name would be quite significant and might be quite a loss more than it was a gain. So yeah, and then I've just got probably the best Spider-Man I've ever seen, with wonderful arm prints and all the rest of it, hanging off a bit of web that I'll probably put in a nice sort of swinging position on his way to solve some crimes in due course. So yeah, overall, I think this is an absolutely fabulous set. If you're a Marvel fan, then it really has to be top of your shopping list. And if you have it sort of on display on its own, it will definitely be incredibly impressive, if a little fragile. But the fact that you can open it from the front and kind of get at all those scenes and all those figures is a real attribute in that setting. Then if you're like me and you want to incorporate it into your city, then I think it's a bit too weak, a bit too difficult to move around, and a bit, well, I don't know, hard to locate. And that's the next bit that I'm going to be focusing on when we go up to the Lego room, because we're really going to have to find a good place for this where A, we can see all of the front, because that's definitely the best angle by a long way. And, well, it's got quite a wide footprint, so I don't think it's going to be as easy as you might think. Okay, so here we are in Brick Nottingham with the building in a position, but probably not its final position, so don't get too used to it there. It kind of creates as many problems as it solves going there. One of them being the fact that this helicopter is far too near and its rotors would be smashing into the top floor there, probably the office of the proprietor as well, so that wouldn't be popular. Now, you'll be happy to hear that when I brought this up in two sections, I didn't drop any section of it or any of the panels on the front, but manipulating it from kind of dumping it here as a sort of passing over place to its temporary position there, all the panels on the front did start sliding off, so I had to rebuild all of those, and that was rather annoying. And then when I did crawl back to where I'm standing now, from that standing hole to this one over here, I did smash my head on the underside of the table. So if I do start to flibble my words and flop things up, then you'll know why, because I've had a minor head injury. Anyway, on to this again. So I think the first option is to kind of incorporate it alongside the other existing buildings I've got on the edge of the standing hole. And that probably isn't going to work, largely because of its size. I mean, it's just too tall. When I had the space tower along that edge, I kept hitting it with my elbows, and it was kind of obstructing our view of the fairground, because if you have a great big line of buildings that size, you really kind of can't see past them. So the idea was kind of to have some medium-sized buildings along that row, and then have all of the really tall ones against this wall, which also would help to block out the door to the closet, and so on. And have them as facades so we could kind of see all of the scenes inside. So I think that might be what we want to do with Daily Bugle. But it does kind of fit on a pavement basis there, I suppose, on that corner. But also that corner site is quite a prestigious site, really, and is quite in demand. And I think I've got something else earmarked for that. And I think having a corner sort of specific build on that corner would be a lot better than this one. So we've got two more options. We can either have this on this side, the left side as we look at it, of this road, this long road that goes off into the distance. But if we do that, then it's kind of going to have to face that way towards the wall. And I don't think that's very good, because the much better side is obviously its front. I mean, probably more so than virtually any other building in the city. So having it facing the wall just seems like a massive loss. You'd only really be able to see it when you kind of peered down here. And whenever we were in the standing hole, you would just see its ugly sort of backside, which isn't the best view at all. So I'm not too sure about that at all. So then our only other real position that is possible is alongside all the other tall buildings. And that does make the most sense, quite obviously, because when it's sort of with all of its buddies, it will fit perfectly in with height and with perspective and all the rest of it. And it will kind of represent part of that really sort of high-rise sort of central business district that you'd expect it to be part of. And the spacing between these two, don't get too sort of put off by, because I probably am going to make them a bit closer. So it'll look like a sort of densely packed central area. So I think I would prefer to do that. But the problem there is I deliberately left it so it would be kind of a 16 wide space there to fit all of these facade skyscrapers in. So the fact that this building is on a 32 deep base plate is a real problem. And I have kind of worked it out, because there is some excess space at the back with all those bins in and so on. And there is a bit of a wide pavement at the front. But if we just moved all of the base up, then basically we'd only just get all of those checkered pieces on. And the edge of those would be right on the very, very edge of the roadway. And I don't think that's going to look very good, because it would be very hard to kind of get in the front door without almost walking on the road. So I'm not a massive fan of that. So I think one of the things that we're going to have to do as part of the kind of redesign and remock of this building, so it fits in Brick Nottingham, is kind of making it a bit narrower depth-wise, kind of shrinking it that way. And I think that will work quite well, because remember, these two top floors are actually only two kind of window panels deep on the side there, whereas the bottom two floors are 3 panels deep. So if I kind of shrink the bottom two so they're all 2 deep, and it's kind of the same width, or depth rather, throughout its entire height, then fitting it along here with its neighbours being the Leaning Tower Ferrari and the Space Tower, I think will work really well. So let's go over to the second standing hole, and you might see better what I mean. Okay, so I've just slid this back so we can see the issue with moving it onto a 16 deep base plate, because although we've got kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 free studs on the back that we could kind of eliminate, we'd lose the bins and so on, and we'll be gaining 6 studs from the edge of the roadside that you kind of get on the road plates, would still be pretty much up to about here on the front, which is just going to be really, really too near the road. So I don't think that does work at all. So this is what I was kind of suggesting, that would get this depth throughout the entire building and thus lose kind of all of that section, which means we'd lose that balcony, but I'm not a massive fan of that anyway, and have it a much more narrow building going along. Now, if we were also to change this into a facade, then, well, and with its back against the wall anyway, it doesn't really matter if we removed those bricks or not, it would kind of look like a facade. I don't think you'd really have a massive problem with losing those sections, because you could pretend that the building kept going and was much, much deeper, with the remaining building being in the wall, with the guillotine of the wall just having chopped it at that particular point. So I think that works. But what I'm going to do next is just rotate this 90 degrees so we can see how it would be if we had it on this street facing the wall. Okay, so here it is fully rotated away from us with its back facing us. And well, I don't really like that much as a major view that we're going to be seeing whenever in this part of the city. I suppose you could have some fun scenes in the sort of backyard and on this balcony, but I'm not a massive fan of it. In rotating it, you'll be happy to hear nothing did fall off, but I did actually put one of my fingers through the movable panel that we looked at on the ground floor and had to repair that. So that is another example of the fragility of the whole thing. Yeah, so I suppose if I did a massive rehash, I could have this with a massive open back, much like I've got with these buildings, but I also don't really want to do that, because one of my design rules is that from the entry into the Lego room, and largely speaking from the first standing hole, none of the open backs of any of the buildings are visible. And if a building is sort of centrally located, like this run of modulars, then they're all enclosed. And it's only when you're in the second standing hole that you can kind of see into the GBC factory or the museum or the hospital, and that's just because a big guillotine's come down and kind of chopped off the back half of those buildings. But I figure with this one, not being right on the edge, if it had an open back, it would kind of look weird and you would be able to see it from certain places over there. So yeah, I don't think I want to keep it on this orientation with a back, and I definitely don't want to keep it in this orientation without a back. So if that doesn't work and the corner position doesn't work, then I think the only real place left for it is alongside the other tall buildings, but with all of this back section kind of ripped off. All right, so final sort of rough trial of positioning, and I think this might be the best one for it. Obviously not exactly as it is now, because the front of the building is completely in the street and is actually blocking traffic, which can't be a long-term solution. But for scale, it's really good alongside those other two that I've already got. It could even be a little bit taller quite easily. Even the big sort of satellite communications tower on the top isn't out of scale at all. So I think that works really well. So if I took off all of those back sections to make it sort of a consistent depth all the way on, it would just sort of fit there. And maybe I'd move the order of these around or something like that. But you get the idea of how it definitely could work. In fact, it looks really great. And because you can see it from absolutely everywhere around the city as well, I think that's a lot better than kind of having it with such a wonderful front vista facing a wall. That would be a real sin in a way. So yeah, I like that. Now the bad side of that is that means that I have to do some really quite serious overhaul on this in removing all of the back, because I'm going to have to completely remod the bottom floor and the second floor as well. Now that shouldn't be too bad. I shouldn't need too many additional pieces, and I can keep all the fire escape on the other side going and so on. So that will have to be a job for a future video. Now, it also begs the question of what I want to do with these kind of removable panels and, well, even the back wall, because if we are going to have it in this position, then, well, we don't arguably need a back wall. We could actually remove all of the back walls and kind of use all of the glass panels so that it liberates to, well, create another floor. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 floors, we could have a fifth and, well, maybe even a sixth, but I'm not sure about that. But I definitely think there's enough pieces in that for one more floor. I'll probably have to get some additional pieces for the fire escape or something like that, but not too bad. So what do we think of removing the back, since we won't be able to see it when it's firmly against the wall? Now, one thing I can immediately think of as being a problem with that is that it's going to lose stability, because if we keep these front panels sort of accessible, that you can kind of pull out, as we've seen all too easily, golly, it really isn't held in that well, then essentially all we're going to have is the two sides holding the thing together. And given that each of the sides is made out of a lot of all these glass panels, there really isn't much strength in them either. So I think the whole thing might be a bit like a house of cards if I remove the back wall. So the alternative is that we use the sort of brick-built sort of permanent back walls sort of method on the front. So it's kind of three-sided like that and is open backed, kind of like I've done my other two towers. And then all we do is see the wall through, and that'll make the sort of interiors pop a little bit more. But it will mean that we won't be able to lift out those panels to have a really good look. So is that a compromise we're not happy with? I'm not sure. I mean, you can't get in the bottom section very easily either because it doesn't have the removable front. So it'd be almost like having 3 more floors or maybe 4 more floors, kind of like that. So yeah, a bit of a compromise and one that I wouldn't mind your help with as well because, yeah, I haven't really decided. But I think it might make a lot of sense to have the front bits all bricked in properly, because then we could actually lift off the whole section like a modular, a lot more easily and a lot more robustly without that sort of front movable, fall-outable bit, and it might work really well. So whatever I do, it's definitely not something for today because I've talked far too long already. So give me your ideas of what you think I should do for mods. I've already added a little bit to Mysterio, as we saw earlier, wherever he's gone. I'm definitely going to do something with the sign, but should I make it ridiculously long and say something like Brick Nottingham Post? Should I take off these bits here, or these screens? Should I take off the Green Goblin sort of explosion scene? I quite like it. And then should I have the back fully bricked or open, and should I make the front fully bricked or with the liftable panels? And do bear in mind that I don't think we can have removable panels and no back without just being able to prod the side and seeing the whole thing tumble into dust. So yeah, a lot to consider. Now I do hope you enjoyed that rather longer than expected review of this rather fantastic set. There's so many details and so many wonderful things to look at that it's quite hard to keep down to any sort of short length. But I hope you appreciate a slightly different perspective, given that I'm not really a Marvel guy. I'm trying to incorporate it into a regular Lego city. And I think when we do, it's going to be absolutely awesome, kind of framed, say, like that, with all the other buildings around it. I think that'll look rather special. And it's a shame that we didn't actually place it in its final position today, but to do that justice, I do think we're going to have to do quite a lot of rework. And I'm kind of anticipating taking this up again right now, bringing it right back down to the building desk and getting started on that. I think that'll be really good fun, especially trying to use as many of the pieces from the original as possible. So yeah, that will be in a video coming up relatively soon, presumably. But that just leaves me to remind you to send me answers to all the questions we just went through about this set, what you think we should do with it, the bits we should keep and the bits we should remove. Do remember also to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome Lego videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And then next time on Robin Hood Bricks, we'll be doing a brick haul. And then on Friday, we'll be doing what I think might be the final motorised ride for fitting in there. That's not all of the rides that we'll be trying to dovetail together. And this one's quite a big one. Oh, no, it's not the last one, actually. I think we've got 2 big ones more. Anyway, this is going to be a very jam-packed area, and we're slowly plodding our way towards it. And if you do want to send me anything, for Brick Haul 100, which will be featuring just your bits and bobs that you decide to send me, letters, pictures, whatever it might be, Lego bricks, minifigures, what have you, then do send me something to Robin Hood Bricks, PO Box 11048, Nottingham, NG8 9QS. And do remember to mark that package UK if you're not in the UK, and on the customs form to write gift and a value of about £30, including postage. That way it should fly through customs without being held up. Otherwise, we might have a real problem doing that video if everything's been kept by the customs man. So other things coming up include a large announcement when we hit 20,000 subscribers, which I hope should be in the next month. Some guesses for that is me joining the Lego Ambassadors Network, the LAN. I'm definitely not going to be ever doing that because I think it really compromises a channel's sort of independence, their views, and their content indeed, because they all have to do the same sort of thing as they're told all at the same time. And I think that's a real problem and definitely something that I'm not going to be doing. Other guesses for the 20,000 announcement have been some really old modular that's very expensive or something like that, like Cafe Corner or something like that. And it's not that either. It's something much different from all of those things. So yeah, 20,000, and we'll make that announcement clear. But anyway, until next time, see you!